with me. I'm sure you told me to, but...
No, I didn't.
Being the hour 7 o'clock, I'd like to open this evening's planning board meeting for April 23rd, 2012. 7 p.m. We have several administrative notes to cover, and I think we're going to have to take them separately because I know that there are going to be some questions and some people may be abstaining from certain votes. This is a project that the planning board has been working on for some time, and we have finally gotten to a place where we want to present a draft to the community at large. This evening's discussion is the first of hopefully many between now and the caucuses and the pre-town meeting, the series of meetings that one has to go through. We, as Eileen just informed me, we did have a legal ad in the paper. We had mailed out to notices to Attorney Angley, Attorney Betters, Associated Engineering, Randy Parker, Richard Serkey, Webby Engineering, Flaherty and Stefani, Brocken Engineering, Kevin Joyce, Lisa Dogger, Charlie Vandini, Alan Cotty, Joseph Marshall, William Abbott, Bill Fornishari, Atlantic Design Engineers, Trifletti Costa, Jeffrey Medcalf, Nicholas Villa, Paul Blanchard, and John Henson. The Planning Board will be holding a public workshop to seek comments and suggestions relative to the Board's proposed site plan review standards for commercial and industrial development. The workshop will be held on Monday, April 23rd, 2012 at 7:05 in the Mayflower Room at Town Hall, 11 Lincoln Street, Plymouth, Massachusetts. Copies of the standards are available at the Office of Planning and Development, Town Hall, 11 Lincoln Street, Plymouth, or online at http://plymouth-mass.gov on the Planning Board's webpage. If you have any questions, please contact the Office of Planning and Development at 508-747-1620, extension 141. I would like to welcome Russell Appleyard and I forget your Judy Barber, both from West Plymouth Steering Committee, I believe, right? They are in the audience with us this evening. This is the first step of hopefully a larger scale discussion. I am going to use the term "we" this evening, and up to the end of this presentation, "we" refers to the planning board and the planning staff. From here on in, I hope "we" refers to not only the planning staff and the planning board, but the many boards, the citizens, town meeting representatives who have a stake, or would be more commonly called stakeholders, in the appearance of the town of Plymouth as we go forward, as we advance to the 400th and well beyond. So this evening I'm going to do a PowerPoint on where we are in the process, what the process was, and some of the key highlights of that process. Again, there are two documents that are available. They are both on the Planning Board link to the Town of Plymouth webpage. Our goal is very simple: to brand development as unique to Plymouth and brand development as unique to its villages. It's our belief that Plymouth is an iconic town. When you say Plymouth, Massachusetts around the country, it conjures up images to people who may not have been here of what they think a small seaside community in New England looks like, especially one that began with the Pilgrims in 1620. Beyond that, Plymouth is made up of many little villages. We have 5 or 6 village centers. Each village has its own specific character. We have shoreline villages, Manomet and Cedarville. We have a shoreline industrial village in North Plymouth. We have our downtown, which has been our historic business center. We have suburban villages, West Plymouth. We have a village that is not actually designated as a village, but functions as a village in the Pine Hills. We expect that we would have the same thing in the Makepeace development. So Plymouth as a whole conjures up a vision to people to visitors who may be coming here. Plymouth as a whole is made up of many different characters, and those characters are defined in their villages, and their villages should have their own unique brand. We want to also encourage traditional architecture designs and materials. We also want to be flexible with upcoming trends. There are two proposed sections in this site plan review. The first one is advisory, suggestions and guidelines. The second one is mandatory. These are built into our zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw will have to be approved by the town meeting. Hopefully it will be this fall's town meeting if we can get through this process. The advisory section is a handbook that our staff can hand to potential developers coming into the community to give them an idea of what we, not the pre-end of this meeting we, but we, the post-end of this meeting, we, the town of Plymouth, the community of Plymouth, would like our town to look like. Some people think that we have an identity. Some people claim that we don't have an identity. We need to have an identity. Plymouth is a wonderful place, and it has to sell itself as a wonderful place. The advisory section applies to special permit uses and certain allowed commercial uses. The advisory section does not apply to any residential development, accessory residential structures, existing uses in buildings, commercial renovations and additions with limited visibility, and the OSMD, which already has standards, the OSMD being the zoning overlay district of the Pine Hills. In the advisory section, the standards are flexible. Development is not one size fits all. Diversity and uniqueness are encouraged. And we have three different characteristic areas of the town. We have Manamet, one of our shoreline communities, North Plymouth, our industrial village, or former industrial village, and the industrial park itself. Sections of the advisory guidelines. There are general standards for townwide, village-style development, and non-village commercial development. I'd like to also add, while I'm at this point, that this document, or these documents, both the advisory and the mandatory documents, have been partially vetted by professionals in engineering, architecture, legal, and also somewhat coincidental and paralleling what has been going on with Jordan Hospital. This document has been developed in parallel with the Healthy Communities initiative that the Planning Board, the School Committee, and the Board of Selectmen approved of several months ago in a joint meeting. To that end, we invited Marc Fenton, the consultant to Jordan Hospital on the Healthy Communities Project Initiative, to also review this document, and we have gotten his comments also. So this is not just the idea of 5 planning board members and a few staff members. We have done some partial vetting to see how this document sets up with the professionals that we deal with. We did it this way in part to be somewhat economical. We did not want to hire a consultant. We knew we weren't going to have the budget given the economics of the municipal budget. So we sought contacts that we knew who we thought would be very fair and objective, and we have gotten their comments, and their comments have also been incorporated into the documents as they stand today. The general standards apply to all locations, and they include complete streets, relationship to surroundings, building and site design, landscaping, architectural style, and finishes. Let's talk a little bit about complete streets. Complete streets are designed for vehicles, walkers, and bicyclists. If anybody has heard the Healthy Communities presentation, there is much discussion on minimizing the individual personal vehicle use and reincorporating, we did this a long time ago, but we've gone away from it, reincorporating the pedestrian, the bicycle, the healthy ways of moving about instead of just plopping ourselves in a car and driving 10 blocks or a half a mile to get from point A to point B. So we are encouraging complete street design in our developments. Relationship to surroundings. Relationships to surroundings incorporate nearby architectural elements, use landscaping as a transition, use landscaping, lighting, and other improvements to blend into neighborhoods. And again, one size does not fit all. Obviously, if you're in a concrete, macadam, brick and mortar village type, landscaping is going to be a little different than if you're in a rural seaside community. Building and site design. Building and site design. We're talking about shared parking and driveways, including pedestrian access and planted contour areas. We want to move away from the isolated, my site, your site. We want to interconnect sites, both vehicularly. We understand that vehicles are here to stay, but also in terms of pedestrian, making it a pleasant transition from one site to another, and again, using landscaping. A lot of these ideas have come from many of the developments that have taken place in town. We have used the lessons learned from the Plymouth Rock Studio site design development process, the Cordage Park site design development process, the Osmond at Pine Hills, the the Trevid at Makepeace, and also many of our large retail areas, Colony Place, Shops at Fives, Viking Development, who have incorporated on their own initiative some quality design. There's a lot of things that we like and we've learned, and there's some things that we don't like in these developments, things that after they have been approved, we see them in action and we realize that maybe we could have done a better job if we had a little bit more forethought. And we've taken the time in developing these standards to have that forethought. Landscaping. Landscaping is for the complement of architecture, enhancing vistas and providing shade. We talk about relocating existing trees as opposed to cutting down vegetation, mature vegetation, and replacing it in all cases with younger commercial stock. Design landscaping to conserve energy, to shade certain buildings from intense heat, to expose buildings that may be subject to wind, to the heat of the sun. Windbreaks in parking areas so that one walking through a parking area or along a promenade does not get buffeted by gusts, open, exposed gusts of wind. Architectural styles and finishes, varying building materials, use of traditional building materials, massing structures for large buildings, using building articulation, not just straight fronts, but offsets to create an illusion of less massing of separate building and structures, and using screening mechanicals, be it HVAC units, be it any type of utility, dumpsters and the like, using more natural material as opposed to just fencing or sticking them in a corner, out of sight, out of mind. Village style development. We want to, in these areas, reduce parking area visibility. We want to have streetscapes. Streetscapes are the combination of street, sidewalk, landscaping, transitional edges as opposed to hard edges. Use established setback patterns, break buildings into smaller masses. We'd like to encourage mixed use and use traditional signage materials as opposed to plastics and clear veneer. Non-village commercial development, use topography to help screen development, construct buildings into slopes, screen large masses with landscaping, front large buildings with traditional storefronts. We don't want sterile. We'd like to, excuse me, in the non-village commercial, in villages, we don't want sterile. In non-village commercial development, such as industrial parks, we can relax that a little bit, but we still want to have a softer front where possible, and not have the stark warehouse look as the welcoming facade. We want to reduce building edges. We want to include overhangs for customers, incorporate pedestrian scaled features. Again, in an industrial park, you're talking about large buildings, large warehousings. We have to bring this down and incorporate some feel for the human being, the size of the human being. A great example is the plan that was developed at 40 Industrial Park Road, where they're adding two buildings onto a parcel that already contains two buildings, and they've done this with landscaping, they've done this with walking trails. The massing of the buildings are such that it's much more comfortable, and it's not as stark as a typical industrial park would be. We break building mass into multiple buildings where we can. We vary facade lines, roof lines, and wall heights. Now the mandatory standards, and these would be the standards that you would find in the second document, which is actually the modifications to the zoning bylaw, which includes site layout, parking, landscaping, pedestrian access, and maintenance. Site layout. Site layout remains very similar to our current standards. We do talk about a 29-foot drive lane in parking lots. I know this has been a subject of discussion in the recent past. I did look up where that number comes from, and the 29-foot radius actually comes from some of the coffee and donut shops. They require a minimum of 29 feet for a 90-degree turn around the building in a drive-up, so that they don't have to worry about collisions, or to minimize collisions in sidewalls and in building corners. That is a number that did not just come out of the air. However, there are some other designs that are available. The double bar parking lines, as opposed to single lines, could help to deal with that number, and is terms of reducing it back down closer to the standard that we have of 25. Central median for projects larger than 100,000 square feet. Pedestrian and bicycle access to and from sites. 4 inches of bituminous pavement. And again, working with topography to minimize hard vertical edges, retaining walls. Parking. There are no changes in the parking ratios for individual uses. Again, there would be a maximum of 12 spaces in a continuous row. We're emphasizing shared parking at the discretion of the building inspector. This would help to reduce spaces by up to 50% in terms of parking requirements. Screen parking lots with landscaping, and use low-impact drainage design, which is really tantamount to stormwater management these days, in terms of capturing our drainage and treating our drainage before it hits the aquifer. Landscaping. Using regional plant varieties, we hear the term native vegetation. Use that where appropriate. However, we also realize that for aesthetic purposes, native vegetation is not always the best landscaping to be used if you want visual impact. So there has to be some flexibility in terms of using ornamental type vegetation. Again, we're going to screen mechanicals. Formal landscape areas should be incorporated for projects over 100,000 square feet, and planting along facades. maintenance. 2 areas of maintenance. All projects should have some level of stormwater management plan, and again, that is tantamount to the new stormwater standards. And operation and maintenance plans. A site is only as good as its infrastructure works, and we need to have ops and maintenance plans and stormwater management plans in hand so we know when things are going to be done, when inspections are done, the results of those inspections, corrective actions, if needed to be taken, when they will be taken. Excuse me. There will be a pre-application review process by the planning board. This will be required for projects over 100,000 square feet. There will be a list of information needed and will include criteria of approval, approval with conditions, and criteria for denial, so that a developer comes in, they understand exactly what we're looking for in the mandatory sections. The next steps, as we see it going forward, we need to have additional public review and comment. Again, this has to be Plymouth's document. It cannot be the planning board's document or the planning staff's document. We want this to be a town-wide effort. And again, I say that the we after this meeting is all of us, not just this board, not just any singular board. We will go through town council review to make sure that everything here is legal. We will take and enhance the graphics in the documents. The planning board will hold continued public hearings throughout the summer and into the pre-town meeting season. We will be available for town meeting reps. We hope that town meeting reps will participate in our public hearings and hopefully present this for adoption at town meeting. The documents are available for review, again, at the planning board page on the town webpage and in the planning department at town hall. And before I close, I just want to say that this effort should not be interpreted as things we're not doing. Many of the things we talk about in here we have been doing. We've tried to enhance what we're doing. We've tried to put them together so that developers who come in will understand what our desires are, what our expectations are, and hopefully this will lead to a streamlining of the process that many of us complain about in terms of getting, business into town. Since this is a non-residential effort, this has nothing to do with residential development. Hopefully it will expedite the issues that come before the town on individual projects, if they have in their hand prior to discussions with design review or the planning board or the board of selectmen or whomever, what our expectations are. We hope that the community participates, and I thank you for your time. We've worked with the intellect that puts forth this type of document, but to get this to be a publicly approved policy, we have to step away from that and we have to get the public's input. Yeah. Whatever that input is, whatever level they want. And I appreciate, the two people here this evening. We need more of that. We need a lot more of that to make this a community document. Anything else? Again, I thank both of you for being here this evening, and we will continue with this process. We have a motion. Tim?
Mr. Chairman, motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Unanimous. Good evening.